Emily Carter never imagined saving a stranger's life would destroy everything she knew. The bullet wound she treated in that freezing Chicago alley belonged to Adrian DeLuca, a man whose world operated by rules she couldn't comprehend. When her boyfriend vanished on their wedding day and she discovered she'd legally married Adrian instead, fury burned through her veins. But kidnapping, fire, and bullets revealed a truth she couldn't deny. The dangerous man who claimed her wasn't her enemy. He was her salvation. And now she had to choose between the safety she'd always known and the passion that could consume them both. If you're ready for a story about danger, devotion, and a love that defies every rule, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Chicago Memorial's emergency room buzzed with the same relentless intensity they had for the past 12 hours. Emily Carter pressed her fingertips against her temples, trying to massage away the headache that had taken root somewhere around hour 8 of her shift. "Nurse Carter, we need you in Bay 3. She was already moving before Doctor Patterson finished calling her name, her sneakers squeaking against the freshly mopped floors as she grabbed a fresh pair of gloves. 27 years old, and she'd spent the last 5 of them perfecting the art of being invisible, blending into the controlled chaos of the ER until she became just another face in scrubs, just another pair of hands keeping the broken pieces of humanity from falling apart completely. Bay 3 held a construction worker with a nail gun injury. Emily worked efficiently, her movements practiced and precise, as she assisted Dr. Patterson with the extraction and cleanup. The patient barely looked at her. Dr. Patterson certainly didn't. She was a ghost in her own life, haunting the spaces between crisis and recovery without leaving so much as a footprint. "Good work," Dr. Patterson said without looking up, already moving toward the next patient. Emily stripped off her gloves and checked the wall clock. 11:47 p.m. Her shift had officially ended 17 minutes ago, but in the ER, time was more suggestion than rule. She'd learned that lesson her first week. Staying late wasn't dedication, it was expectation. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "Marcus, where are you? Thought you'd be home by now." She typed back quickly. "Just leaving. Be there soon." His response came immediately. "Whatever, I'm going out." Emily stared at the message, feeling that familiar hollowness expand in her chest. 3 years together, and somewhere along the way, Marcus had stopped being the charming law student who'd swept her off her feet and become this. A man who texted whatever when she worked late saving lives. A man whose eyes glazed over when she tried to talk about her day. A man who was going out at midnight on a Wednesday without asking if she wanted to come along. Not that she would have gone, she was exhausted. "Emily, you're still here?" Jessica, one of the other night nurses, paused beside her, pulling her dark hair into a ponytail. "Girl, go home. You look dead on your feet." "Heading out now." Emily managed a tired smile. "You working a double?" "Unfortunately." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Student loans don't pay themselves. You taking the red line?" "Walking tonight. Need the fresh air." Jessica frowned. "It's freezing out there and it's almost midnight. You sure that's safe?" "I'll be fine. It's only 15 minutes. "If you say so, text me when you get home." "Will do." Emily grabbed her coat from her locker, a threadbare navy peacoat that had seen better winters, and wound her scarf around her neck. The cold hit her the moment she pushed through the hospital's exit doors, a bitter, bone-deep Chicago cold that made her breath fog in front of her face. The streets were quieter than usual for a Wednesday night. She pulled her coat tighter and started walking, her mind already running through tomorrow's schedule. Another double shift. Another endless parade of bleeding, broken bodies that needed fixing. Another day of being invisible. The shortcut through the alley behind Monroe Street would save her 5 minutes. Emily had taken it dozens of times before without incident. Tonight, she almost walked past it, some instinct making her pause at the mouth of the narrow passage. But her feet hurt. Her head throbbed, and 5 minutes mattered when you were this tired. She turned into the alley. The first thing she noticed was the smell. Garbage, and something else. Something metallic. The second thing was the movement in the shadows about 30 feet ahead. Emily slowed, her exhaustion sharpening into alertness. "Please, I can pay you more." The voice was deep, cultured, absolutely wrong for this place and time. "Shut up." A different voice, rougher. "This ain't about money." Emily should have run. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to turn around and run. But 5 years in the ER had rewired something fundamental in her brain. When she heard pain, when she sensed danger, she moved toward it instead of away. She pressed herself against the brick wall and edged forward, pulling out her phone. Her thumb hovered over 911 as she peered around a dumpster. 3 men stood in a pool of weak light from a broken street lamp. 2 of them wore dark clothing and ski masks. The third, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like an expensive wool coat, had his hands raised in a gesture that might have been surrender or negotiation. "Victor sends his regards," the rough voice said. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the confined space. The tall man jerked backward, his hand flying to his shoulder as he stumbled against the alley wall. The 2 attackers didn't wait to see him fall. They were already running, their footsteps echoing and fading as they disappeared toward the opposite end of the alley. Emily should have called 911 and waited. She should have stayed hidden. She should have done literally anything except what she did next. She ran toward the wounded man. Sir, can you hear me?" She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands already assessing the damage. Blood was spreading across his white shirt beneath the coat, dark and fast. Shoulder wound, arterial bleeding possible. "I need you to stay with me, okay? I'm a nurse. I'm going to help you." The man's eyes found hers, dark eyes, almost black in the dim light, sharp with pain but also with something else. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "You should run," he said, his voice strained but still carrying that cultured edge. "They might come back. Then we'll both be here when they do." Emily pulled off her scarf and pressed it against the wound, applying firm pressure. "I need you to keep pressure here." "Can you do that?" His hand came up, large and warm, even through the cold, covering hers. "What's your name?" Emily Carter. What's yours?" "Adrian." He winced as she adjusted the scarf. "Adrian DeLuca." The name meant nothing to her. "Okay, Adrian, I'm going to call 911, and then we're going to keep you from bleeding out in this alley. Sound good? You're not afraid?" It wasn't a question, but there was wonder in it, as if fear was the only logical response and her absence of it confused him. "I'm terrified," Emily admitted, pulling out her phone with her free hand. "But I'm also a nurse and you're bleeding. So we're going to deal with the bleeding first and the terror later." Something flickered across Adrian's face. Amusement, maybe, or respect. Practical. "It's kept me alive so far." She called 911, giving their location and a rapid-fire assessment of Adrian's condition. The dispatcher promised an ambulance in 5 minutes. Emily hung up and focused back on her patient. "Tell me about yourself, Adrian," she said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "What do you do?" "Import-export." The answer came too quickly, too smoothly. A lie, then. "You?" "I work at Chicago Memorial, ER nurse. Ironically, I just got off shift." "Some night off." Adrian's breathing was becoming labored. The blood was still coming, soaking through her scarf. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this." "You didn't pull the trigger. Nothing to apologize for." Emily readjusted her grip, pressing harder. "Stay with me, Adrian. Tell me something else. Are you married? Kids?" "No." His eyes were starting to lose focus. "No one." "Parents? Siblings? Someone we should call?" "There are people. They'll find out." He blinked hard, fighting to stay conscious. "But no one who would do this." "Do what?" "Stay." With a stranger bleeding in an alley. His hand tightened over hers. "You really aren't afraid of me, are you?" "Should I be?" "Most people are." Emily met his gaze directly. "Most people didn't just watch you get shot. Right now you're just a patient who needs help. Everything else can wait." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Adrian's eyes didn't leave her face. "Emily Carter," he said quietly, as if testing the name. "I'm going to remember you." "Good. Remember to keep breathing while you're at it." The ambulance screeched to a halt at the alley entrance, and suddenly Emily was surrounded by paramedics, including Tom, who'd worked with her at Memorial before transferring to ambulance duty. "Emily, what the hell?" Tom took in the scene with practiced efficiency. "You okay?" "I'm fine. GSW to the left shoulder, possible arterial involvement. He's lost a lot of blood." Tom and his partner moved in, taking over. Emily stepped back, her hands shaking now that the immediate crisis had passed. Her scarf was ruined, soaked through with blood. Her coat had dark stains on the sleeves. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," a police officer said, appearing at her elbow. "We'll need a statement." Emily nodded numbly, watching as the paramedics loaded Adrian onto a stretcher. His eyes found hers one more time before they lifted him into the ambulance. She couldn't read his expression. At the police station, Emily gave her statement 3 times to 3 different detectives. Yes, she'd heard the name Victor. No, she didn't know who Victor was. Yes, she was sure there were 2 attackers. No, she couldn't identify them. They'd worn masks. Yes, she was certain Adrian DeLuca had been unarmed. "You did a brave thing tonight, Miss Carter," Detective Morrison said, sliding a business card across the table. "Stupid, but brave. If you remember anything else, give me a call." Emily took the card. "Is he going to be okay, Adrian?" "He's in surgery at Chicago Memorial. That's your hospital, right?" "Yes." "Then maybe you can check on him yourself." Morrison's expression was carefully neutral. "Though I'd advise staying out of Mr. DeLuca's business from here on out." "What business is that?" "The kind that gets people shot in alleys." Morrison stood. "Go home, Ms. Carter. Get some rest. And maybe think twice about taking shortcuts through dark alleys at midnight." Emily arrived home at 3:17 a.m. to find Marcus passed out on the couch, surrounded by empty beer bottles and pizza boxes. The apartment smelled like stale alcohol and disappointment. She stepped over his feet and went to the bathroom, peeling off her blood-stained clothes and standing under scalding water until her skin turned red. When she finally climbed into bed, her mind kept replaying those dark eyes staring up at her, that cultured voice saying her name like a promise. "I'm going to remember you." Emily told herself it didn't matter. She'd done what any decent person would do. By tomorrow, Adrian DeLuca would be just another patient, another face in the endless parade of broken bodies she helped fix. She was wrong. Emily's phone alarm went off at 10 a.m., 4 hours after she'd finally fallen asleep. She silenced it and lay in bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling of the apartment she shared with Marcus. Not shared, really. Tolerated together, there was a difference. "You're up early," Marcus said from the doorway, scratching his stomach through a wrinkled t-shirt. "Thought you worked late." "I did. I have a shift at 3. "So you got, 4 hours of sleep?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Must be nice, having such a flexible schedule." Emily sat up slowly. "Flexible?" "Yeah, choose your own hours, come and go as you please." She stared at him. "Marcus, I worked a 12-hour shift yesterday. I'm working another one today. That's not flexible, that's mandatory." "Whatever." He was already losing interest, his attention drifting to his phone. "Hey, I need to borrow $200. "For what?" "Does it matter? I'll pay you back." It mattered because Marcus had borrowed $300 last month and $500 the month before that, and she'd yet to see a cent of it returned. It mattered because she was drowning in student loans and credit card debt while he seemed to float through life consequence-free. "I don't have it," Emily said quietly. "Check your account. You just got paid." "And I just paid rent, which was due a week ago, if you recall." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I told you I'd get you the money. Why do you have to be like this?" "Like what? Broke?" "I'm like this because I'm broke, Marcus. You're broke because you waste money on stupid shit." "What stupid shit? I work 60 hours a week and live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a broken heater. What exactly am I wasting money on?" The argument escalated from there, following the same tired script they'd performed a dozen times before. Marcus accused her of being controlling. Emily pointed out she was the only one paying bills. Marcus played the victim. Emily felt guilty for not being more understanding. It ended the way it always did, with Marcus storming out, slamming the door behind him, leaving Emily alone in the apartment, wondering when, exactly, love had curdled into this toxic stalemate. She showered again, scrubbing until her skin felt raw, then dressed in fresh scrubs and made the journey to Chicago Memorial. The ER was quieter during the day shift, though quiet was relative. Emily checked in at the nurse's station and started her rounds, trying to lose herself in the familiar rhythm of vitals and medications and patient care. "Did you hear about the GSW they brought in last night?" Jessica materialized at her elbow, eyes bright with gossip. "Some big shot got popped in an alley, VIP treatment, private room, security guards posted outside his door." Emily's hand stilled on the chart she was updating. "Security guards?" "Yeah, it's wild. Apparently he's somebody important. Maria from ICU said he's gorgeous too, like movie star gorgeous. Jessica leaned in conspiratorially. She also said there were some scary-looking guys in suits who showed up asking questions. Not cops. Something else. What room? Why? You want to sneak a peek? Jessica grinned. I don't blame you. I heard he's in the private wing, room 412. Emily told herself she was just checking on a patient. Professional courtesy. Making sure the man whose life she'd saved had survived surgery. She told herself a lot of things as she made her way to the 4th floor. Room 412 was exactly where Jessica said it would be, and yes, there were 2 men in dark suits standing outside. They straightened when they saw Emily approaching, their hands moving to their jackets in a way that made her pulse spike. I'm Nurse Carter, she said, keeping her voice steady. I was there when Mr. DeLuca was shot. I just wanted to check on him. The men exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a phone, spoke quietly into it, then nodded at her. He's been asking for you, the man said, which made no sense at all. Go ahead. The room was dimmer than standard hospital rooms, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. Adrian DeLuca lay in the bed, his left shoulder heavily bandaged, an IV line running into his right arm. His eyes were closed, dark lashes stark against skin that was paler than it should be. Emily had seen 1,000 patients in hospital beds. None of them had looked quite like this. Expensive even in a hospital gown, powerful even while injured, dangerous even while sleeping. You came. His eyes opened, finding her immediately. No grogginess, no confusion, just that sharp, dark gaze that seemed to see straight through her. I wanted to make sure you were okay, Emily said, staying near the door. The surgery went well? So they tell me. The surgeon said I was lucky. The bullet missed the major arteries. Adrian shifted slightly, wincing. Thanks to someone who knew how to apply pressure correctly. Anyone with first aid training would have done the same. But they didn't. You did. He studied her with unsettling intensity. Sit, please. Emily hesitated, then moved to the chair beside his bed. How are you feeling? Like I was shot. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. But alive, which is preferable to the alternative. Do they know who did it? The police have their theories. I have mine. His expression hardened briefly, then smoothed out. But that's not your concern. Tell me about you, Emily Carter. You said you work in the ER. Yes, 5 years now. You're good at it. How would you know? Because I'm still breathing. Adrian's gaze dropped to her hands, then back to her face. And because I've had a lot of time to think about the woman who didn't run when she heard a gunshot. Most people have better survival instincts. Maybe my instincts are different. I hear someone in trouble. I help. Even when helping might get you killed? Emily met his eyes. Yes. Something shifted in his expression. A crack in whatever mask he wore, revealing something raw and real underneath. That's either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. Adrian laughed, then immediately regretted it, his hand going to his bandaged shoulder. Don't make me laugh. It hurts. Then stop saying things that are funny. Emily stood. I should go. I just wanted to make sure you were recovering. Emily. Her name in his voice sounded different than it did in Marcus's. Weighted, important. Thank you for what you did. I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything. I was just doing what anyone should do. But anyone didn't, you did. Adrian reached out, his hand catching hers before she could step away. His grip was warm, firm, careful. I meant what I said last night. I'm going to remember you. Emily should have pulled away, should have made some polite comment about patient care and professional boundaries, should have walked out of that room and never looked back. Instead, she found herself saying, what kind of import-export business requires security guards? Adrian's smile was slow and knowing. The complicated kind. That's not an answer. No, he agreed, but it's the only one I can give you right now. Emily pulled her hand free, but gently. Get some rest, Mr. DeLuca. Follow your doctor's orders, and maybe consider finding a safer line of work. Adrian, he corrected. And if I do, will you visit me again? I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because you're dangerous, because I can feel it, the way I can feel a storm coming, because something about you makes me want to stay when I should run, and that terrifies me more than the gun or the blood or any of it. Because you'll be discharged soon, Emily said instead. And I have patients who actually need me. I need you. The words hung in the air between them, too heavy, too loaded with meaning. Neither of them should be assigning to a chance meeting in a dark alley. No, Emily said quietly. You needed a nurse. You got one. That's all this is. She left before he could argue, before she could see whether her words landed like the lie they felt like in her mouth. Over the next 3 days, Emily tried very hard to forget about Adrian DeLuca. She picked up extra shifts, worked until exhaustion dragged her under, came home to an increasingly hostile Marcus, who seemed to resent her very existence. She paid bills, ate ramen, and avoided the 4th floor of Chicago Memorial. On the 4th day, flowers arrived at the nurse's station. Not a small bouquet. An enormous arrangement of white roses and deep red peonies, expensive and excessive, and completely inappropriate for a hospital workplace. The card read simply, "Thank you for my life. AD." Holy shit, Jessica breathed, reading over Emily's shoulder. Who sent you those? A patient. Emily stared at the flowers, something tight and uncomfortable twisting in her chest. Just a patient. Just a patient doesn't send flowers that cost more than my monthly rent, Em. Who is this guy? No one. It's nothing. But it wasn't nothing, and they both knew it. The flowers were followed by a box of chocolates from a boutique Emily couldn't afford to walk past. Then a gift certificate to a restaurant she'd never be able to eat at. Then a handwritten note that said simply, "I hope you're well." "This is insane," Marcus said, holding up the note with barely concealed rage. "Some guy is sending you love letters?" "They're not love letters. He's just thanking me for helping him." "By sending you thousands of dollars in gifts? What did you do? Save his life or sleep with him?" Emily's temper, usually so carefully controlled, finally snapped. "I found him bleeding in an alley and kept him from dying before the ambulance arrived. That's it. That's all. I did my job." "Then why does he keep sending you things?" "I don't know. Maybe because he's grateful. Maybe because he's a decent human being who knows how to say thank you." Novel concept, I know. Marcus's face darkened. "Watch it." "Or what? You'll storm out again? Go ahead. You're good at that." The fight that followed was brutal and familiar, all their old wounds torn open and bleeding fresh. Marcus accused her of cheating. Emily accused him of being a hypocrite. Where had he been last Tuesday night? Who was he texting at 2 a.m.? It ended with Marcus grabbing his jacket and leaving, but not before throwing one last barb. "You know what? Maybe you should go be with your mystery man. At least he appreciates you, right?" The door slammed hard enough to rattle the walls. Emily stood in the wreckage of their argument, shaking with adrenaline and something that felt uncomfortably like relief. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Is everything all right?" Adrian Emily stared at the message. Then she typed, "How did you get this number? I have resources. Are you safe?" "That's creepy." That's not an answer. Emily sat down on this couch, surrounded by Marcus's mess, and made a decision that would change everything. "I'm fine. Stop sending me things. It's too much." "Then let me thank you properly. Dinner, tomorrow night. I have a boyfriend." "I know, dinner isn't a marriage proposal. It's just food and conversation. This is a bad idea. The best things usually are." 7 p.m. "I'll send a car." Emily should have said no, should have blocked the number, should have done 1,000 things differently. Instead, she typed, "One dinner. That's all. That's all I'm asking. For now." Emily threw her phone onto the couch and pressed her hands against her face, wondering what, exactly, she'd just agreed to. The answer would come soon enough. The black car that arrived at 6:45 p.m. was not what Emily expected. She'd pictured something flashy, ostentatious, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and power. Instead, a sleek dark sedan pulled up to her building, expensive but understated, the kind of car that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. The driver, a middle-aged man in a simple black suit, stepped out and opened the rear door without a word. Emily hesitated on the sidewalk, her hand clutching her small purse. She'd changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on a simple black dress she'd worn to her cousin's wedding 2 years ago. Nothing fancy, nothing that suggested she was trying too hard, but presentable enough that she wouldn't embarrass herself at whatever restaurant Adrian had chosen. Marcus hadn't come home. His toothbrush was gone from the bathroom, along with some clothes from the closet. Whether he was making a point or actually leaving, Emily couldn't tell anymore. She'd stopped being able to read him somewhere along the way, or maybe she'd never really known him at all. "Ms. Carter?" The driver's voice was polite, patient. "Mr. DeLuca is expecting you." Emily slid into the car before she could change her mind. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something expensive she couldn't identify. The seats were heated despite the mild evening, a small luxury that felt absurdly decadent. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic, heading toward the downtown core. "Where are we going?" Emily asked. "Aurelio's," the driver replied. "Mr. DeLuca has a private dining room reserved." Aurelio's. Emily had heard of it. Impossible not to, living in Chicago. It was the kind of restaurant that required reservations months in advance, the kind of place where entrees started at $100 and went up from there. The kind of place Emily Carter, ER nurse with $60,000 in student debt, would never step foot in under normal circumstances. These were not normal circumstances. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a building overlooking the Chicago River. Emily followed the maitre d' through an opulent main dining room where crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. Women in designer dresses laughed softly over wine. Men in tailored suits conducted business over perfectly plated food. Emily felt like an imposter in her 2-year-old dress and department store heels. The private dining room was smaller, more intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights reflecting off the dark water below. A single table sat in the center, set for 2 with more silverware than Emily knew what to do with. Adrian stood as she entered. He looked different outside the hospital, no longer the wounded man in a hospital gown. He'd transformed into someone else entirely. The dark suit was perfectly tailored, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean frame. His left arm moved with slight care, the only indication of his injury, but otherwise he appeared completely recovered. His dark hair was styled back from his face, revealing sharp features and those intense eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. "Emily." Her name was a greeting and something more. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. "Thank you for coming." "I said I would." She stayed near the door, suddenly uncertain. "You look well, recovered." "Modern medicine is remarkable." Adrian moved toward her, his movements fluid despite the injury. "And I had excellent emergency care." He gestured to the table. "Please sit. I promise I don't bite." "That's not particularly reassuring, given that I know nothing about you." "Then let's remedy that." But he pulled out her chair, waiting until she sat before taking his own seat across from her. "What would you like to know?" "The truth would be a good start. What kind of import-export business requires armed guards and gets you shot in alleys?" Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. "Direct. I appreciate that." He poured wine from a bottle that had been breathing on the table, something red that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "The truth is complicated. I have time." "Do you?" His gaze was knowing. "Your boyfriend didn't seem happy about you being here." Emily stiffened. "How do you know about Marcus?" "I told you, I have resources." "You mean you had me investigated?" "I had you protected." Adrian's voice remained calm, matter of fact. "After what happened in that alley, I needed to ensure you weren't targeted because of your association with me." "Association? I helped a stranger. That's not an association. To certain people, any connection to me is significant." He took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim of the glass. "Victor Roselli, the man who ordered that attack, doesn't believe in innocent bystanders." The name meant nothing to Emily, but the way Adrian said it, with cold precision, made her skin prickle. "Who is he?" "A rival. Someone who's been trying to eliminate me for years." Adrian set down his glass. "And before you ask, yes, my business operates in areas that aren't entirely legal, but I'm not what you're probably imagining." "What am I imagining?" "Drugs, trafficking, the usual assumptions." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "My family has been in Chicago for 3 generations. We handle logistics, negotiations, problem-solving for people who can't go through traditional channels. Sometimes that means skirting laws. Sometimes it means breaking them. But I have lines I don't cross." Emily processed this, turning it over in her mind. "So you're a criminal?" "By legal definition, yes." Adrian didn't flinch from the word. "By my own definition, I'm a businessman operating in markets the government refuses to regulate properly. That's a convenient rationalization. It's the truth. Not a comfortable truth, but truth nonetheless. He poured water into her glass, the gesture oddly domestic. I'm not asking you to approve of what I do, Emily. I'm just answering your question honestly. A waiter appeared with the first course, something delicate involving scallops and microgreens that looked too beautiful to eat. Emily stared at the plate, her appetite warring with nerves. Why am I here, Adrian? She asked quietly. Really? Because I wanted to thank you. You've already thanked me, multiple times, expensively. Those were gestures. This is different. Adrian picked up his fork, then set it down again without eating. You saved my life, and you asked for nothing in return. You treated me like a patient, not a commodity. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I'm a nurse, that's what we do. No, that's what you do. Most people, they see an opportunity. They see leverage, a way to profit from someone else's vulnerability. His eyes held hers. You just saw someone bleeding who needed help. You didn't care who I was or what I could offer you. You just helped. Emily felt something shift in her chest, a dangerous softening toward this man who was fundamentally wrong for her in every possible way. That doesn't make me special. That makes me decent. In my experience, the two are often the same thing. Adrian finally picked up his fork, taking a small bite of the scallop. Tell me about your boyfriend. Marcus, right? The change in subject was jarring. What about him? Are you happy? Emily's first instinct was to lie, to offer the socially acceptable response about relationships being work and compromise. But something about the way Adrian asked, without judgment, with genuine curiosity, made her pause. I don't know anymore, she admitted. We've been together 3 years. He used to be different. Or maybe I was different. I can't tell which changed. What was he like when you met? Emily allowed herself to remember, pulling up images from a time when Marcus Hale had seemed like everything she wanted. Charming, ambitious. He was in law school and I was finishing my nursing degree. He paid attention to me, made me feel seen. And now? Now he resents me for working too much. He borrows money he never pays back. He disappears for days and gets angry when I ask where he's been. The words came easier than she expected, 3 years of frustration spilling out to a virtual stranger. He makes me feel invisible again. Which is ironic because feeling invisible was what made me notice him in the first place. Why stay? It was the question Emily asked herself every night. Fear, maybe. Inertia. The belief that love is supposed to be hard work, and if I just work hard enough, we'll fix whatever's broken. Love should be many things, Adrian said softly, but it shouldn't make you disappear. Emily's throat tightened. What would you know about it? Very little, honestly. A rueful smile touched his lips. I've never been in love. Never allowed myself the vulnerability. In my line of work, attachments are liabilities. Then why did you bring me here? Why the gifts, the attention? If attachments are liabilities, I'm just another risk. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Because for the first time in my life, I think the risk might be worth it. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Emily should have made a joke, deflected, changed the subject. Instead, she found herself asking, worth what? Finding out what it feels like, to be seen by someone who doesn't want anything from me except for me to keep breathing. He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. You fascinate me, Emily Carter. Your courage, your compassion, the way you run toward danger instead of away from it. I want to know more. You barely know me. Then let me change that. His hand moved the final inch, his fingers brushing hers. Have dinner with me again. Let me take you somewhere you've never been. Let me show you what it feels like to be the center of someone's attention instead of invisible. Emily should have pulled away, should have reminded him about Marcus, about the impossibility of anything between them, about the fundamental incompatibility of their worlds. Instead, she turned her hand over, her palm meeting his. One more dinner, she heard herself say, but I'm not making any promises beyond that. Adrian's smile was slow and devastating. I wouldn't expect you to. They finished the meal talking about safer things. Emily's work at the hospital, Adrian's childhood in Chicago, the city they both loved in different ways. He was surprisingly easy to talk to once the heavy topics were set aside. intelligent and well-read, with a dry sense of humor that made her laugh despite herself. When the car dropped her home at 11, Emily felt lighter than she had in months. The apartment was still empty. Marcus hadn't returned. She should have been worried. Instead, she felt only relief. Her phone buzzed as she changed into pajamas. "Thank you for tonight. Sleep well. Adrian." Emily stared at the message, then typed back, "Thank you for dinner. It was lovely. Same time next week?" She knew what she should say, knew that continuing down this path would only lead to complications she couldn't afford, knew that Adrian DeLuca represented everything dangerous and unknown and fundamentally wrong for someone like her. Yes, she typed anyway. 3 days later, everything changed. Emily was restocking supply carts in the ER when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Emily Carter?" The voice was male, official sounding. "This is Officer Reynolds with the Chicago Police Department. We need you to come to the station. It's regarding Marcus Hale." Her stomach dropped. "What happened? Is he okay?" "That's what we need to discuss. Can you come in this afternoon?" Emily left work early, her mind racing through possibilities. Accident, arrest, injury. The police station was exactly as depressing as she remembered from 3 nights ago, all fluorescent lights and institutional beige. Officer Reynolds was waiting for her, a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." Emily sat, her hands gripping her purse. "What's this about? Where's Marcus?" "That's what we're trying to determine. When was the last time you saw him?" 4 days ago. We had a fight and he left. Took some of his things. I assumed he was staying with a friend. Have you tried calling him?" "Yes. Multiple times. It goes straight to voicemail." Emily's voice was steady, despite the fear creeping up her spine. "Please, just tell me what's going on." Reynolds pulled out a file folder, opening it to reveal photographs. "Do you know this woman?" The photos showed a blonde in her 30s, attractive in a hard-edged way. Emily had never seen her before. "No. Who is she?" "Melissa Grant. She filed a complaint 2 days ago claiming Marcus Hale took $15,000 from her under false pretenses." The world tilted slightly. 15,000? That's impossible. Marcus doesn't have that kind of money. According to Ms. Grant, he convinced her he was a successful attorney and needed capital for a business investment. She gave him the money 3 weeks ago. When she tried to contact him about returns, he disappeared. Emily felt sick. Marcus isn't an attorney. He dropped out of law school 2 years ago. Reynolds' expression was carefully sympathetic. "Are you aware of any other incidents? Other people Mr. Hale might have borrowed money from?" "He borrowed from me. A few hundred here and there. But I thought, we lived together. I didn't think—" Emily stopped, reality crashing over her in cold waves. "What else aren't you telling me?" "The apartment you share. Who's on the lease?" "Both of us. We signed together when we moved in last year." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Had she actually seen the lease? Or had Marcus just told her she was on it? "I'm going to need you to check on that." Reynolds slid a business card across the table. "Call your landlord. Verify the lease agreement. And if you hear from Marcus Hale, contact me immediately." Emily walked out of the police station in a daze. She called the landlord from the parking lot, her hands shaking as she held the phone. "Miss Carter?" "Yes, about the apartment. I've been trying to reach your boyfriend. He's 3 months behind on rent." 3 months? But I've been paying it." Emily stopped. She'd been giving Marcus cash every month for her half of the rent. He told her the landlord preferred cash, didn't like checks. "Whose name is on the lease?" "Marcus Hale. Just him. Is there a problem?" Emily hung up without answering. She sat in her car staring at nothing as pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. The borrowed money, the vague job situation, the way he was never home but always broke, the lies stacked on lies stacked on lies. She'd been funding his scam without even knowing it. Her phone rang. Adrian. "Emily, are you all right? You sound upset." "How did you know I'm upset?" "Because I know you." A pause. "What happened?" Emily laughed, a broken sound. "My boyfriend is apparently a con artist who's been lying to me for 2 years. The police are looking for him. I'm not on the lease of the apartment I've been paying rent for. And I'm sitting in a parking lot trying to figure out when exactly my life became a complete disaster." "Where are you?" The police station on... I know which one. Stay there. I'm sending someone. Adrian, I don't need... You need somewhere safe to think. Let me give you that, please. Emily was too tired to argue. 20 minutes later, the familiar black sedan pulled up, the same driver stepping out to open the door. She got in without protest, letting herself be driven through the city as the sun set over Lake Michigan. They didn't go to a restaurant this time. The car pulled up to a high-rise building in the Gold Coast, all glass and steel, an understated luxury. The driver led her to a private elevator that opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Adrian was waiting. He'd ditched the suit jacket, his white shirt rolled up to reveal forearms that shouldn't have been as distracting as they were. The shoulder wound clearly still pained him. She could see it in the careful way he moved, but his focus was entirely on her. "Tell me everything," he said simply. So she did. The whole sordid story spilled out. Marcus's lies, the money, the other woman, the lease, the 3 years she'd wasted on someone who'd been using her from the start. Adrian listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want me to find him?" Adrian asked finally. "What would you do if you did?" "That depends on what you want. If you want your money back, I'll get it. If you want him to disappear, he'll disappear. If you want him to hurt the way he hurt you..." Adrian's voice was cold, dangerous. "I can arrange that too." Emily should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual way he offered violence as a solution. Instead, she felt a dark satisfaction that someone was finally taking her pain seriously. "I don't want him hurt," she said slowly. "I just want him gone. Out of my life. Out of my apartment. Just gone. Consider it done." "Adrian, I can't afford to pay you." "Shh. I'm not asking for payment." He moved closer, his hand lifting to brush a strand of hair from her face. "You saved my life, remember? This is me returning the favor." "This isn't the same thing, isn't it? You're in danger, maybe not physical danger, but danger nonetheless. Let me protect you. Let me help." Emily looked up at him, at this beautiful, dangerous man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. "Why do you care so much?" "Because when I was bleeding in that alley, you didn't see Adrian DeLuca, crime boss and liability. You saw a person who needed help, and you gave it without hesitation." His thumb traced her cheekbone, achingly gentle. "I want to be the person who does that for you, the person who sees Emily Carter, not the invisible nurse or the girlfriend who gets taken for granted. Just you. You don't know me well enough to want that. Then let me learn." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Let me show you what it feels like to be chosen instead of settled for." Emily knew she should step back, should thank him politely and leave, should return to her disaster of a life and fix it herself the way she'd always fixed everything, alone, exhausted, invisible. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "Okay," she whispered. Adrian's smile was triumph and tenderness mixed together. "Stay here tonight. The spare bedroom is yours for as long as you need it. Tomorrow, we'll deal with Marcus and the apartment and all of it. But tonight, just let yourself rest." Emily wanted to protest, to insist she could handle it herself. But the truth was she was so tired of handling everything alone, so tired of being strong and capable and invisible. "Just tonight," she agreed. It wasn't just tonight. It couldn't be, and they both knew it. Something had shifted between them, some invisible line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. As Adrian showed her to the guest room, a space larger than her entire apartment, with windows overlooking the city, Emily felt the last of her resistance crumbling. "There are clothes in the closet that should fit you," Adrian said, pausing at the door. "Help yourself to anything you need. And Emily, you're safe here. I promise." After he left, Emily stood at the window staring out at Chicago's glittering skyline. Her reflection stared back. The same face, the same green eyes, but something different in the set of her shoulders. Something less defeated. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. "Girl, where are you? You missed your shift. Everything okay?" Emily stared at the message, reality pressing back in. She'd abandoned her shift without calling. Probably lost her job. Her boyfriend was a criminal. She was homeless. And she was standing in a luxury penthouse belonging to a man she barely knew, a man who'd casually offered to make someone disappear. This was insane. But as she looked around the beautiful guest room, felt the soft carpet under her feet, remembered the way Adrian had looked at her like she mattered, really mattered. Emily couldn't bring herself to regret the choices that had led her here. She typed back to Jessica. Long story. I'll explain tomorrow. I'm okay. Then she changed into the silk pajamas she found in the dresser, expensive, perfectly sized, suspiciously perfect, and climbed into a bed softer than any she'd ever slept in. For the first time in 3 years, Emily Carter fell asleep feeling safe. She had no idea the price that safety would demand. Morning came too bright through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Emily woke disoriented, forgetting for a moment where she was. Then it all came flooding back. Marcus, the lies, Adrian, this impossible situation. She found Adrian in the kitchen making coffee with the easy competence of someone who didn't rely on staff to do everything for him. He'd clearly been up for hours, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. "Good morning," he said, handing her a cup. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in months, actually." Emily accepted the coffee, perfectly prepared the way she liked it, even though she'd never told him. Those resources again. "Thank you for letting me stay." "You can stay as long as you need." Adrian leaned against the counter, studying her. "I had my people look into Marcus's situation last night. It's worse than the police know." Emily's stomach sank. How much worse? He's got outstanding debts to at least 6 different people, totaling close to $40,000. The apartment situation is the tip of the iceberg. He's been running the same con for at least 5 years, targeting women mostly. You're not the first. The coffee turned bitter in her mouth. 5 years. I'm sorry. And he did look sorry, his expression genuinely sympathetic. But there's good news too. I found him. Emily set down her cup carefully. Where? Does it matter? Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. What matters is what you want to happen next. I can handle this a dozen different ways, but I need to know what you want. What did she want? Justice felt hollow. Revenge felt exhausting. All Emily really wanted was to erase the last 3 years and get back the person she'd been before Marcus Hale had convinced her she was lucky anyone paid attention to her at all. I want my money back, she said finally. Whatever he took from me. And I want him to leave Chicago. I don't want to see him, hear from him, or spend another second of my life thinking about him. Done. Adrian pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. My people will have your money by this afternoon. Marcus will be on a bus out of the city by tonight with a very clear understanding that returning would be unwise. You can do that? Just like that? I told you, I have resources. He pocketed his phone and moved closer. Now, what are we going to do about you? What do you mean? You need somewhere to live. The apartment's not an option. Even if Marcus was on the lease, that's not a safe place for you anymore. And before you argue about imposing, let me be clear. I'm not asking you to stay here as charity. I'm asking because I want you here. Emily's heart hammered. Adrian, that's not... We barely know each other. We know enough. You saved my life. I'm trying to save yours. Maybe not in the same way, but the principle stands. His hand found hers, warm and solid. Stay. Get your life sorted out. And let me continue figuring out why the sight of you makes me believe I could be better than what I am. It was too much, too fast, too intense. But Emily found herself nodding anyway, because the alternative was returning to her empty apartment and her empty life, and she'd spent too many years being empty. 1 week, she said. I'll stay for 1 week while I figure things out, but then I need to find my own place, get back to normal. Adrian's smile said he knew she was lying to herself, but he accepted her terms gracefully. 1 week, starting now. Neither of them believed that's all it would be. The week Emily promised herself turned into 2, then 3. She told herself it was practical. She needed time to find an apartment she could actually afford, needed to sort through the wreckage Marcus had left behind, needed to get back on her feet financially. All of which was true, but the real reason she stayed was simpler and far more dangerous. She was falling for Adrian DeLuca. It happened in small moments that accumulated like snow, each one insignificant alone, but together creating something impossible to ignore. The way he had coffee ready every morning exactly how she liked it. The way he asked about her shifts at the hospital with genuine interest, remembering names of patients and coworkers she'd mentioned days before. The way he looked at her across the dinner table like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever encountered. The way he never pushed, never demanded, never expected anything except her company. Emily had apologized profusely to the hospital administration for abandoning her shift, expecting termination. Instead, she'd been given a written warning and mandatory counseling. Someone had made a generous donation to the hospital in her name, earmarked for the pediatric wing. She didn't need to ask who. "You can't keep doing things like that," she told Adrian that evening, standing in his massive kitchen while he prepared dinner with surprising skill. Doing what? He'd looked up from chopping vegetables, genuinely confused. Throwing money at my problems, making them disappear. Why not? I have the money. You have the problems. The math seems simple. Because that's not how real life works for normal people, Adrian. We can't just write checks and make consequences vanish. He'd set down the knife, giving her his full attention. You're right. But you're not just any normal person to me, Emily. You're the person who saved my life when you had every reason to run. The least I can do is make yours a little easier. That's not the least you can do. That's excessive. Then I'm excessive. He'd smiled, that devastating smile that made her forget why she was annoyed. Get used to it. But getting used to Adrian's world was proving more complicated than accepting his generosity. The penthouse was beautiful, but felt like a gilded cage sometimes, all glass and steel and perfect surfaces that showed no trace of actual living. The people who came and went, men in dark suits who spoke in low voices, women who looked at Emily with barely concealed curiosity or hostility, reminded her constantly that she didn't belong here. And then there were the absences. Adrian would disappear sometimes late at night, returning hours later with tension in his shoulders and something dark in his eyes. He never explained where he went, and Emily never asked, both of them maintaining the careful fiction that his business was separate from whatever was growing between them. Until the night everything shattered. Emily woke at 2 a.m. to raised voices. She pulled on a robe and crept to the living room, finding Adrian standing near the windows with 3 men she'd never seen before. One of them was bleeding from a cut above his eye. I don't care what Roselli threatened, Adrian was saying, his voice cold enough to freeze. You don't negotiate with him. You don't acknowledge him. You sure as hell don't promise him anything without my explicit approval. He said he'd burn down the warehouse. Let him try. Adrian's tone was absolute. He makes a move like that. He starts a war he can't win. And you should know better than to show fear to a man like Victor Roselli. Emily must have made some sound because Adrian's head snapped toward her. For a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes before recognition softened his expression. Emily, go back to bed. You're bleeding. She'd noticed the dark stain spreading across his left side, soaking through his shirt. It's nothing. You're bleeding, she repeated, moving toward him before she could think better of it. Everyone out, now. The 3 men looked at Adrian, who nodded curtly. They left without argument, leaving Emily alone with a man who was clearly trying very hard not to show pain. Let me see. She was already in nurse mode, professional and efficient, lifting his shirt to reveal a long gash across his ribs. Not deep enough to be life-threatening, but deep enough to need stitches. What happened? Business disagreement. Adrian winced as she prodded the wound. The other guy looks worse. I don't care about the other guy. Sit down. She retrieved her medical bag. She'd started keeping one at the penthouse after the 2nd week, some instinct telling her it would be needed. Adrian sat on the couch, watching her with something like amusement as she cleaned and stitched the wound with practiced efficiency. You're good at this, he observed. 5 years in the ER. You see a lot of knife wounds. Emily tied off the last stitch, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. This was a knife, wasn't it? Yes. And the person who did it? Won't be using that hand again anytime soon. Emily sat back, looking at him, really looking at him. The man who made her coffee and asked about her day, and looked at her like she hung the moon. The same man who casually mentioned permanently maiming someone over a business disagreement. I can't keep pretending I don't know what you are, she said quietly. What you do. I've never asked you to pretend. Haven't you? You keep that part of your life completely separate. You disappear, you come back bleeding, and we both act like it's normal. Emily's voice cracked slightly. But it's not normal, Adrian. None of this is normal. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. Do you want to leave? Did she? Emily had asked herself that question 100 times over the past 3 weeks. The answer should be yes, should be obvious and immediate and absolute. No, she whispered. That's what scares me. I should want to leave. I should be horrified by all of this. But I'm not. And I don't understand why. Because you see me. Adrian reached for her hand, his fingers threading through hers. Not the monster everyone expects, not the king of some criminal empire. Just me. The man who's completely undone by a green-eyed nurse who runs toward danger instead of away from it. That doesn't make this okay. No, it doesn't. He pulled her closer until she was standing between his knees, his hands resting on her hips. But it makes it real. And I haven't had anything real in my life for longer than I can remember. Emily knew she should step back, should maintain the distance they'd been carefully preserving. Instead, she found herself leaning in, her forehead resting against his. This is a terrible idea, she breathed. The worst, Adrian agreed. We're going to hurt each other. Probably. I don't know if I can handle your world. I don't know if I can let you go. Emily closed the final inch between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely inevitable. Adrian responded immediately, one hand sliding up her back, the other tangling in her hair, kissing her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Emily knew there was no going back. Whatever line they'd been dancing around for 3 weeks had just been obliterated. Stay, Adrian said against her lips. Not as a guest, not as someone I'm helping. Stay as mine. Emily should have asked what that meant, should have demanded clarity and boundaries and some kind of definition. But in that moment, with Adrian's hands on her skin and her heart hammering in her chest, she didn't care about definitions. Okay, she whispered. This time, she meant it. The next morning, Emily woke in Adrian's bed, tangled in sheets that smelled like him, expensive cologne and something darker, something uniquely his. He was already awake, propped against the headboard, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. I'm trying to figure out if you're real or if I'm going to wake up bleeding in that alley again, hallucinating the woman who saved me. Emily rolled her eyes, but warmth flooded her chest. Definitely real. Unfortunately for you, real comes with morning breath and bedhead. I'll take it. He pulled her closer, kissing her temple. All of it. They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking about nothing and everything. Emily learned that Adrian spoke 3 languages, hated mushrooms, and had a younger sister who died when he was 16, a loss that still carved pain across his features when he mentioned it. Adrian learned that Emily had wanted to be a doctor before student loans made it impossible, that she was terrified of heights despite living in Chicago, and that she'd been invisible long before Marcus made her feel that way. My parents, she said quietly, tracing patterns on his chest. They had 5 kids. I was the middle one. Not the oldest, not the youngest, not the smartest or the prettiest or the most talented. Just there. I learned early that the best way to survive was to not need anything from anyone. Is that why you became a nurse? To be needed? Emily considered that. Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to be the person who saw others the way I wanted to be seen. I see you, Adrian said fiercely. Every single part of you, and I'm not looking away. It was a promise and a warning wrapped together, and Emily chose to believe it. Reality intruded 3 days later in the form of Jessica showing up at the penthouse unannounced. Emily had given her the address reluctantly, swearing her to secrecy. Jessica had promised, but the look on her face when the doorman let her into the building suggested she hadn't quite believed Emily's description of where she was living. Holy shit, Jessica breathed, standing in the middle of the living room, turning in slow circles. This is insane. You're living in a palace. It's not mine. It's Adrian's. Adrian, the mystery man who sent you those flowers. Jessica's eyes were sharp, cataloging everything. The one you've been weirdly secretive about for weeks. I haven't been secretive. Em, you've been living with a man whose last name I don't even know, and you haven't told anyone at work. That's the definition of secretive. Jessica sat down on the couch, patting the cushion beside her. Spill everything. Now. So Emily told her, leaving out the criminal enterprise parts, but including everything else. How she'd met Adrian, how Marcus had turned out to be a con artist, how Adrian had helped her, how she'd somehow ended up here. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through shock, concern, and something that might have been envy. Let me get this straight, she said when Emily finished. You saved some random guy's life, your boyfriend turned out to be a lying scumbag, and now you're living with a gorgeous millionaire who's completely obsessed with you. That's a reductive summary, but essentially yes. Girl, Jessica grabbed her hands. This is either the best thing that's ever happened to you or a disaster waiting to explode. I can't tell which. Join the club. I can't tell either. Are you happy? The question caught Emily off guard. Was she happy? She thought about the past 3 weeks, the mornings with coffee and conversation, the evenings cooking dinner together, the nights tangled in Adrian's arms, the way he looked at her like she mattered, the way she'd started to believe it. Yes, she said quietly. I think I am. Then fuck it. Jessica squeezed her hands. You deserve to be happy. You've spent years making yourself small for people who didn't appreciate you. If this guy sees you for who you really are, don't let that go. Even if it's complicated, especially if it's complicated, the easy stuff is never worth it. Emily hugged her friend tightly, grateful for the support she hadn't realized she needed. But as Jessica left, promising to cover for her at work, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the complications were only just beginning. She was right. 2 days later, Emily was leaving the hospital after a particularly brutal shift when a car pulled up beside her. Not Adrian's car. A different one, sleek and black and somehow menacing. The window rolled down, revealing a man in his 50s with silver hair and cold blue eyes. Emily Carter, he said, his voice smooth and cultured. Get in. We need to talk. I don't know you, but I know you. I know you're living with Adrian DeLuca. I know you saved his life, and I know that makes you very valuable to me. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My name is Victor Roselli, and if you don't get in this car right now, Adrian will find you in pieces. Fear spiked through her, sharp and immediate. Emily looked around. The parking lot was nearly empty, the few people present too far away to help. Her hand moved toward her phone. I wouldn't, Roselli said softly. I have men watching you. You make a call, you run, you do anything except get in this car, and I'll have no choice but to hurt you. And I really don't want to hurt you, Emily. I just want to talk. Emily's nursing training kicked in. Assess the situation, identify the threat, calculate the odds of survival. Running would get her killed. Screaming would get her killed. Calling Adrian would potentially get them both killed. Getting in the car was the only option that kept everyone alive long enough to find another solution. She got in the car. Roselli smiled, satisfied, and the driver pulled away from the hospital. Emily kept her breathing steady, her mind racing through options. The door locks were engaged. She'd noticed that immediately. Roselli sat beside her, too close, his cologne expensive and cloying. You're smart, he observed. Adrian chose well. I'm not his possession. He didn't choose me for anything. No? Then why are you living in his penthouse, sleeping in his bed, wearing clothes he bought you? Roselli's voice was pleasant, conversational, which somehow made it worse. You're his weakness, Emily, the first one he's had in 20 years. That makes you incredibly valuable. What do you want? Adrian has something of mine. A shipment that went missing 6 months ago. Very valuable. Very important. Roselli pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of a warehouse. He's hidden it well, but I know he has it, and I want it back. I don't know anything about that. Of course you don't. You're a nurse, not a criminal. Roselli pocketed his phone. But Adrian cares about you, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to call him. Tell him you're safe. Tell him you're staying with a friend for a few days. And while you're my guest, he's going to think very carefully about whether keeping my property is worth losing you. Emily's heart hammered. He'll come for me. I'm counting on it. Roselli's smile was sharp. But by the time he finds you, he'll have made the right choice. Because if he doesn't, you'll die slowly and painfully, and I'll make sure he watches every second of it. The car stopped at an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, industrial and isolated. Emily was escorted inside by 2 men who handled her carefully but firmly, making it clear that resistance would be met with violence. The room they put her in was small, concrete, with a single chair and a bare bulb overhead, like something out of a crime movie, except this was terrifyingly real. Roselli handed her a phone. Call him. Tell him you're safe. Nothing else. Emily took the phone, her hands remarkably steady. She dialed Adrian's number, praying he'd hear what she wasn't saying. He answered on the first ring. Emily? Hey. She kept her voice calm, casual. I'm okay. I'm staying with Jessica for a few days. I need some space to think. Silence on the other end, stretching too long. Then, put him on. What? Put Roselli on the phone, Emily. Now. Her blood ran cold. How did he know? Roselli took the phone, his expression darkening. Smart boy. Always were too clever for your own good. Emily couldn't hear Adrian's response, but whatever he said made Roselli's jaw tighten. You have 48 hours, Roselli said into the phone. Return what you stole, or I start sending her back to you in pieces, starting with those pretty hands that saved your life. He hung up and tossed the phone aside. Well, so much for the easy way. He'll kill you, Emily said quietly. You know that, right? The second he finds me, you're dead. Perhaps, but I've been at war with Adrian DeLuca for 15 years. If I die taking him down with me, that's an acceptable outcome. Roselli moved toward the door. Make yourself comfortable, Emily. You're going to be here a while. The door slammed shut, followed by the sound of locks engaging. Emily was alone. She allowed herself 30 seconds of panic, shaking hands, racing heart, the overwhelming urge to scream. Then she took a deep breath and started assessing her situation the way she'd been trained to assess trauma patients. Identify the problems. Prioritize. Make a plan. The room had no windows. One door locked from the outside. Concrete walls too thick to break through. The chair was metal, bolted to the floor. No obvious weapons. No way to communicate with the outside world. But she was alive, unharmed, and Adrian knew she was missing. Emily sat down in the chair and waited, because waiting was all she could do. Hours passed. No one came. No food, no water, no contact. The silence was oppressive, broken only by occasional sounds from elsewhere in the building. Footsteps, voices, doors closing. Emily tried to keep track of time, but lost count around hour 6. Her shift at the hospital had ended at 7. It had to be well past midnight by now. Adrian would be looking for her. She had to believe that. She must have dozed off at some point because she jolted awake to the sound of the door opening. One of Roselli's men entered, carrying a bottle of water and a sandwich. Eat, he said, setting them on the floor within her reach. I need to use the bathroom. He considered this, then jerked his head toward the door. Make it quick. The bathroom was small, dingy, but it had a window. Small, high up, but a window. Emily used the facilities quickly, her mind calculating. The window was too small for her to fit through, but it faced what looked like an alley. If she could get a message out somehow. Time's up, the guard called. Emily returned to her prison, filing away the information about the window. Every detail mattered. More hours passed. Emily ate the sandwich mechanically, drank the water, and tried not to think about what Adrian was doing to find her. Tried not to think about what Roselli would do if Adrian didn't comply with his demands. Tried not to think about the very real possibility that she might die in this concrete room. She was saved from spiraling by the sound of gunfire. Distant at first, then closer. Shouts. Running footsteps. More gunfire, the sharp crack of it echoing through the building. Emily's heart leaped into her throat. Adrian had found her. The lock on her door clicked and Emily tensed, ready to fight or flee or whatever the situation demanded. But when the door swung open, it wasn't one of Roselli's men standing there. It was Adrian. He looked like something out of a nightmare, or a dark fantasy, depending on perspective. Blood spattered across his shirt, gun in his hand, his expression absolutely murderous. But when his eyes found hers, something cracked in that cold facade. Emily. She launched herself at him, and he caught her with his free arm, crushing her against his chest. Are you hurt? His hands were already checking her over, professional and thorough despite the chaos around them. Did they touch you? I'm fine. I'm okay. She pulled back to look at him, taking in the cuts on his face, the blood that might or might not be his. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? Adrian's voice was rough, strained. You're mine, Emily. I will always come for you. More gunfire erupted somewhere in the building. Adrian pushed Emily behind him, his body a shield as he led her toward the exit. They passed bodies. Roselli's men, Emily assumed, though she tried not to look too closely. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp and absolutely perfect. Adrian's men were everywhere, securing the perimeter, weapons drawn. A black SUV waited, engine running. Adrian put Emily in the back seat, then climbed in beside her. Go, he told the driver. As they pulled away, Emily saw flames beginning to lick at the warehouse windows. Someone had set a fire. "Roselli?" she asked quietly. "Dead." Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. "He won't threaten you again. No one will." Emily should have felt relief. Instead, she felt numb, the adrenaline draining away and leaving only exhaustion in its wake. "I was so scared," she whispered. Adrian pulled her into his arms, his hand cradling the back of her head. "I know, I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should have protected you better. How did you find me? I have people everywhere. The second Roselli took you, I knew. It just took time to locate the warehouse." His voice dropped to something raw and painful. "Longest hours of my life, Emily, knowing he had you, knowing what he could do to you. But you found me. You saved me. Because I can't exist in a world where you don't." Adrian tipped her face up to his dark eyes fierce. "Do you understand that? You've become essential to me, necessary. The thought of losing you—" His voice broke slightly. "I would have burned down this entire city to get you back." Emily believed him. She'd seen the bodies, the blood, the absolute destruction he'd unleashed to find her. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. "Take me home," she said softly. Adrian's arms tightened around her. "Already on our way." The penthouse felt different when they returned. Emily stood in the living room she'd grown familiar with over the past weeks, but now it felt less like a sanctuary and more like a reminder of how dangerous Adrian's world truly was. The glass walls that had seemed so beautiful suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. Adrian watched her from across the room, still covered in blood that wasn't entirely his own. He'd been silent during the drive back, his jaw tight, something dark and turbulent moving behind his eyes. "You should shower," Emily said quietly. "Get cleaned up." "So should you." His voice was rough, strained. "There's blood on your clothes." Emily looked down. He was right. Roselli's blood, probably, from when Adrian had held her. The reality of what had happened crashed over her in a wave. She'd been kidnapped, held prisoner, rescued in what was essentially a small war. People had died tonight. Adrian had killed them. For her. "I can't do this," she whispered. Adrian went very still. "Can't do what?" "This. Your world. The violence, the danger, the constant threat." Emily's hands were shaking now, delayed shock finally setting in. "Someone kidnapped me because of you, because being with you made me a target." "I know." Adrian's voice was carefully controlled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckled grip on the back of a chair. "And I will spend the rest of my life making sure it never happens again." "You can't promise that, not in the life you lead." "Then I'll change the life I lead." Emily laughed, a broken sound. "You can't just walk away from what you are, Adrian. It doesn't work that way." "Watch me." He moved toward her, closing the distance between them. "Emily, I have spent 15 years building an empire in the shadows. I've made enemies, accumulated power, done things I'm not proud of. But in all that time, I never had a reason to want something different. Until you." "That's not fair. You can't put that on me." "I'm not putting anything on you. I'm telling you the truth." Adrian's hands came up to frame her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You showed me what it feels like to be seen as a person instead of a weapon. You made me want to be better. And if being better means walking away from everything I've built to keep you safe, then that's what I'll do." "And what happens when you resent me for it? When you wake up one day and realize you gave up your entire life for someone you barely know?" "I know you." His voice was fierce, absolute. "I know you run toward danger to help people. I know you take your coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar. I know you cry at insurance commercials and laugh at terrible puns. I know you carry the weight of other people's pain because you think that's what makes you valuable. And I know that losing you would destroy me in ways that Roselli and all his men never could." Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm terrified." "So am I." Adrian's thumbs brushed away her tears with infinite gentleness. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. So tell me what you need. Tell me what it takes to make you stay, and I'll do it. Anything. I need you to be honest with me about everything. No more disappearing without explanation, no more keeping your business separate from our life. If I'm going to be in this, I need to understand what this actually is." Done. I need you to get out. Not immediately, not recklessly, but I need to know you're working toward a legitimate life, something that doesn't end with you bleeding in an alley or me as collateral damage. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. That's not an overnight process. I have responsibilities, people who depend on me. But yes, I'll start the transition. I'll find a way out. And I need you to promise me something. Emily's voice dropped to barely a whisper. If it ever becomes a choice between your empire and my safety, you choose me. Every time. That's not even a question. Adrian pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her like a fortress. You're already the choice, Emily. You've been the choice since the moment you pressed your hands against a bullet wound and refused to let me die. Emily let herself melt into him, breathing in the scent of him beneath the copper tang of blood. This was insane. Everything about this situation was absolutely insane. But standing here in Adrian's arms, she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. We should both shower, she said eventually. Separately. I need to think. Adrian pulled back, studying her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. Emily spent 40 minutes under scalding water, scrubbing away blood and fear and the lingering sensation of being trapped in that concrete room. When she finally emerged, wrapped in Adrian's robe because it was there and smelled like him, she found him on the balcony. He'd showered too, changed into simple black pants and a white t-shirt that did nothing to hide the bandages wrapped around his ribs. The cut from a few nights ago must have reopened during the rescue. He was staring out at the Chicago skyline, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. Emily slid the glass door open and stepped outside. The night air was cold, but she welcomed it, the sharp clarity it brought. You're hurt again, she observed. I'll live, thanks to you teaching me how to properly care for wounds. Adrian glanced at her, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Turns out having a nurse around is useful. Is that why you want me to stay? Medical benefits? Among other reasons. He set down his glass and turned to face her fully. Have you finished thinking? I don't think I'll ever finish thinking about this. About us. About what staying means. Emily moved to stand beside him at the railing, looking out at the city that had brought them together. But I've decided something. What's that? I'm staying. Not because you rescued me, not because I'm scared to leave, but because somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, I fell in love with you. The words came easier than she expected. The real you. The man who makes coffee and asks about my day and holds me like I'm something precious. But also the man who killed 6 people tonight to get me back. All of it. I love all of it, even the parts that terrify me. Adrian went very still. Say that again. Which part? The part where you love me. Emily turned to look at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd somehow become essential to her existence. I love you, Adrian DeLuca. Completely. Terrifyingly. Probably stupidly. The kiss was inevitable, necessary, consuming. Adrian pulled her against him with a desperation that matched her own, kissing her like she was air and he'd been suffocating. Emily kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 3 weeks of tension and fear and longing into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said, the words rough and raw. I didn't think I was capable of it anymore. Thought that part of me died with my sister. But you brought me back to life in that alley, and you've been doing it every day since. I love you, Emily Carter, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. Starting with getting out of the criminal empire business? Starting with that, he agreed. I have legitimate investments, real estate, a shipping company, some tech startups. I can transition the profitable parts of my operation into legal channels, sell off or shut down the rest. It'll take time, but I'll do it. What about your people? The ones who work for you? I'll take care of them, set them up in legitimate positions or help them transition out. The ones who can't make that shift, Adrian's expression hardened. They'll have to find other employment, but I won't leave anyone who's been loyal to me hanging. Emily nodded, reassured by his answer. This was the man she'd fallen for. Someone who took responsibility seriously, who protected the people under his care, even as he tried to change his life. There's something else we need to talk about, Adrian said carefully. The police are going to have questions about tonight, about the warehouse fire, the bodies, all of it. What do we tell them? Nothing. My people are cleaning up the scene as we speak. By morning, it'll look like a drug deal gone wrong. Roselli's organization will scatter without him, and his death will get attributed to rival gangs. You were never there. Emily knew she should object to the cover-up, to the manipulation of evidence. But the truth was, she didn't want to spend months answering police questions, didn't want her kidnapping to become public knowledge, didn't want to relive the terror of those hours in that concrete room. Okay, she said quietly. We never talk about this again. Agreed. They stood together in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. Finally, Adrian spoke again. Move in with me, officially. Not as my guest or someone I'm helping, but as my partner, my equal in everything. I already live here. You have clothes in the guest room and act like you're temporarily staying. I want you to make this place yours. Our home, not just my penthouse you happen to be occupying. Emily considered this. I want to keep working at the hospital. I'm not giving up my career. I wouldn't ask you to. Your work is part of who you are. I'd never try to change that. And I want my own space. A room or an office or something that's just mine. The guest room is yours. Turn it into whatever you want. And we're doing this as partners. That means you consult me on major decisions. You tell me when something's wrong. You let me in instead of trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. Adrian smiled, something warm and genuine that transformed his entire face. Partners. I can do that. Then, yes. Emily rose on her toes to kiss him softly. I'll move in officially. Make this ours. The next few weeks were a strange kind of domestic bliss mixed with underlying tension. True to his word, Adrian began the process of legitimizing his business operations. Emily watched him work, meetings with lawyers and accountants, selling off properties and interests, restructuring legitimate companies to absorb his people. It wasn't easy. There were threats from rivals who saw his withdrawal as weakness, challenges from within his own organization from men who didn't want to go straight. Adrian handled it all with the same cold efficiency he'd shown in the criminal world, but Emily could see the toll it took. She saw it in the tension in his shoulders when he came home late, in the way he'd wake up at 3 a.m, reaching for her like he needed to confirm she was still there, in the careful way he watched her whenever they were in public, as if expecting another threat to materialize. You're going to give yourself an ulcer, Emily told him one evening, finding him staring at his laptop with an expression that suggested murder. Thompson won't sign the transfer papers. Says if I'm getting out, he wants a bigger cut. Who's Thompson? Runs my logistics operation. I'm trying to transition him into the legitimate shipping company, give him a path forward that doesn't involve jail time. He's being difficult about it. Emily moved behind his chair, her hands finding the knots in his shoulders. Maybe he's scared. Change is terrifying, especially when you've only known one way of life. He should be grateful. I'm offering him a future instead of a prison sentence. You're offering him the unknown. That's not always the same as a future. Emily dug her thumbs into a particularly tight spot, feeling Adrian relax slightly under her touch. Talk to him. Really talk to him. Not as his boss, but as someone who understands what he's risking. Adrian reached up to cover one of her hands with his. When did you get so wise? 5 years of dealing with terrified patients who think they're dying. You learn to read fear pretty quickly. She kissed the top of his head. Go talk to Thompson. I'll order dinner. Adrian did, and whatever he said must have worked because the papers were signed the next day. It was a small victory in a much larger war, but Emily celebrated it anyway. She'd started making the penthouse truly theirs, adding touches that softened Adrian's austere aesthetic. Plants on the windowsills, colorful throw pillows on the couch, photos from her phone printed and framed. Nothing major, just small moments that made the space feel lived in rather than staged. Adrian noticed everything. He'd come home to find a new addition and smile, this private smile that was just for her, like each change was proof that she was really staying. Emily had kept working at the hospital, though she'd cut back to 3 shifts a week at Adrian's gentle insistence. She was still paying off her student loans. Adrian had offered to clear them entirely, but she'd refused. Some things she needed to do herself. Jessica had become a regular visitor to the penthouse, her initial awe giving way to genuine friendship with Adrian. It was strange watching her best friend and the man she loved bond over shared stories of Emily's stubbornness, but it felt right. Like pieces of her life finally fitting together instead of existing in separate compartments. He's good for you, Jessica told her one afternoon. the two of them sharing wine on the balcony while Adrian was at a meeting. I've never seen you this happy, this present. I feel present, Emily admitted. Like I'm finally living my life instead of just surviving it. Does it still scare you? His world, what he was involved in? Every day. But he's getting out, Jess, really getting out. And even when it was dangerous, even when it terrified me, I never felt invisible. He sees me, all of me. That's worth being scared for. Jessica raised her glass. To being seen, and to scary, complicated love that's better than safe, boring indifference. They clinked glasses, and Emily felt profoundly grateful for friends who understood, for a life that was finally hers, for a man who loved her enough to change everything. But she should have known peace never lasted. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Emily was at the hospital finishing up her shift when Adrian's name flashed on her phone. Hey, I'm just about to... There's been an incident. Adrian's voice was tight, controlled. At the shipping warehouse, there was a fire. Several of my people were inside. Emily's stomach dropped. Are they okay? 3 are fine, 2 are in critical condition. They're being taken to Chicago Memorial. I need you to... He stopped, and Emily could hear him taking a breath. I need you to make sure they get the best care possible. Of course. What are their names? Marcus Sullivan and James Chen. Emily, the fire wasn't an accident. Someone set it deliberately. Who? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. There was something dark in his voice, the dangerous edge she'd heard the night he rescued her. I have to handle this. Can you take care of my people? Yes. I'll make sure they're okay. Where are you? At the warehouse. I'll meet you at the hospital as soon as I can. He hung up before she could respond. Emily immediately went to the ER, finding Dr. Patterson and explaining the situation. 2 critically injured patients would be arriving soon, and they needed the trauma team ready. Marcus Sullivan and James Chen arrived within 20 minutes, both with severe burns and smoke inhalation. Emily assisted with the initial assessment, her professional training overriding the personal connection. These were Adrian's people, men he'd been trying to help transition to legitimate work, men someone had tried to murder. Sullivan was stable enough for the burn unit. Chen was touch and go, his lungs badly damaged. Emily stayed with him while they worked, monitoring vitals, adjusting oxygen levels, doing everything she could to keep him alive. Adrian arrived 2 hours later, his face grim. Emily met him in the waiting area, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. How are they? He asked. Sullivan will make it. Chen is critical but stable for now. It's going to be a long recovery for both of them. Emily pulled back to look at him. Who did this? Vincent Calabrese, one of Roselli's former lieutenants who didn't appreciate me eliminating his boss. He's been making noise about taking over Roselli's territory, and apparently that includes targeting me. Adrian's jaw was tight. I should have seen this coming. Should have anticipated someone would try to fill the power vacuum. This isn't your fault. Yes, it is. I brought them into legitimate work, promised them they'd be safe, and someone burned them alive because of me. Adrian. Emily took his face in her hands, forcing him to focus on her. You can't control what violent people do. You can only control how you respond. So what are you going to do? He was quiet for a long moment, something struggling behind his eyes. 6 months ago, I would have gone to war. Would have burned down everything Calabrese owns and made him watch before I killed him. And now? Now I'm going to call the police. Give them everything they need to arrest him for arson and attempted murder. Let the law handle it the way it's supposed to. Adrian's voice was strained, like the words physically hurt. Because that's what getting out means, right? Trusting the system instead of taking justice into my own hands. Emily's heart ached for him, for how hard this clearly was. I'm proud of you. Don't be. I still want to kill him. I want it so badly I can taste it. Adrian's hands were shaking slightly. But I made you a promise. I said I'd get out. I'd be better, and I meant it, even when it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It won't always be this hard. Won't it? Adrian pulled away from her, running a hand through his hair. Emily, I've spent 15 years solving problems with violence. It's what I know, what I'm good at, trying to be someone else, someone better. I don't know if I can sustain it. You're not trying to be someone else. You're just trying to be the best version of yourself. Emily moved closer, taking his hands. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. I'll remind you when you forget. I'll hold you when it's hard. I'll celebrate with you when you succeed. That's what partners do. Adrian looked at her like she was the only solid thing in a world gone unstable. I don't deserve you. Probably not. Lucky for you, I don't care. She kissed him softly. Go call the police. Give them Calabrese. And then come home with me. He did exactly that. Detective Morrison took Adrian's statement, his expression carefully neutral, as Adrian laid out evidence of Calabrese's involvement in the fire. Emily didn't know what kind of evidence Adrian had or how he'd obtained it so quickly, and she deliberately didn't ask. Calabrese was arrested that night. The story made the news: arson, attempted murder, organized crime connections. Adrian's name was mentioned as a witness, nothing more. The transition to legitimacy continued, but something had shifted between them. Emily saw it in the way Adrian looked at her now, like she was the anchor keeping him from drifting back into darkness. It was flattering and terrifying in equal measure, the weight of being someone's reason for change. They didn't talk about it directly, but it hung between them, this understanding that they were both holding on tight to something precious and fragile. A week after the fire, Emily came home to find the penthouse transformed. Candles everywhere, soft music playing, and Adrian standing in the middle of it all wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car used to. What's all this? She asked, setting down her bag. A celebration? Adrian moved toward her, taking her hands. Sullivan was released from the hospital today. Chen's prognosis is good. Calabrese is in jail awaiting trial. And I closed the last of my illegal operations this afternoon. As of 5 p.m. today, I'm officially a legitimate businessman. Emily's breath caught. Adrian, that's amazing. It's terrifying, he corrected, but he was smiling. I have no idea what I'm doing anymore, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. He pulled her closer. For you, for us, for the future I want to build with you. What kind of future? The kind where I come home every night and you're here. Where we build something real together, where I'm not looking over my shoulder waiting for the next threat. Adrian's voice dropped. Where maybe, eventually, there are kids who never have to know their father was once a criminal. Emily's heart stuttered. Kids? Too soon? Maybe, but also not. She laughed, overwhelmed. I don't know. This is all happening so fast. We have time. All the time in the world. Adrian kissed her forehead. I just wanted you to know where my head is, where my heart is. You're not just the woman I love, Emily. You're my future. All of it. That's a lot of pressure. Then share it with me. Tell me what you want. What kind of future you're imagining. Emily thought about it, really thought about it. 6 months ago, her future had been more shifts at the hospital, more fights with Marcus, more years of feeling invisible and unimportant. Now? I want this, she said slowly. Us, here, building a life together. I want to watch you become the man you're meant to be when you're not trapped by your past. I want to keep saving lives at the hospital and come home to you. I want... She took a breath. I want everything we can build together. However long it takes, whatever shape it ends up being. That's all I needed to hear. Adrian swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom despite her laughing protests. Now let me show you exactly how much I appreciate you believing in me. Later, tangled in sheets with Adrian's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Emily felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. She was wrong about one thing, though. They didn't have all the time in the world. The threat came 3 weeks later, just when Emily had started to believe they might actually have a normal life. She was at the hospital, mid-shift, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple, chilling in its brevity. He can't protect you forever. Attached was a photo of her leaving the penthouse that morning. Emily's blood ran cold. She immediately called Adrian, who answered on the first ring. Someone's watching me, she said without preamble, sending him the screenshot. I just got this. The silence on the other end was deadly. Where are you? The hospital, ER. Stay there. Don't leave the building. I'm sending security now. Adrian, who, I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. His voice was pure ice. Stay put, Emily. I mean it. 2 men in dark suits arrived within 15 minutes, positioning themselves at the ER entrance. Emily tried to focus on her patients, but her hands shook as she checked vitals and administered medications. The invisible safety she'd felt for the past month had shattered with a single text message. Adrian arrived an hour later, his expression grim. He pulled her into a private consultation room, his hands immediately checking her over as if expecting to find injuries. "I'm fine," Emily assured him. "Just scared." The photo was taken this morning at 7:32. I've had my security team review all footage from the building. The photographer was across the street, likely using a long-range lens. Adrian's jaw was tight. "Whoever sent this wanted you to know they can get to you." "But who? Calabrese is in jail. Roselli is dead. Who else would target me?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Adrian pulled out his phone, showing her a series of messages. "I've been getting threats too. Anonymous, untraceable. Someone knows I'm getting out and they're not happy about it." Emily read the messages, each one more threatening than the last. Promises of violence, warnings about betrayal, vague references to debts unpaid. "What debts?" "I don't know. I've settled everything, paid everyone what I owed, unless—" Adrian stopped, something shifting in his expression. "Unless this is about my father." "Your father? You've never mentioned him." "Because he's been dead for 10 years, or so I thought." Adrian sat down heavily, running a hand through his hair. "My father built the organization I inherited. He made enemies, lots of them. When he died, I assumed those debts died with him. But if someone's come back looking for payment—" "What kind of payment?" "Territory, money, blood." Adrian looked at her, and Emily saw fear there for the first time since they'd met. "My father wasn't a good man, Emily. The things he did, the people he hurt. I spent years trying to build something different, trying to be better than him. But his sins don't disappear just because I want them to." Emily moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "Then we figure out who this is and deal with it, together." "No." Adrian's response was immediate, fierce. "You're not getting involved in this. You're the one thing in my life that's good and clean and untouched by all the blood. I won't let my father's legacy destroy you too. That's not your choice to make. We're partners, remember? You don't get to shut me out when things get dangerous." "This is different. This is—" Adrian's phone rang, interrupting him. He glanced at the screen, and his expression went completely blank. "I need to take this." He stepped out of the room, leaving Emily alone with her racing thoughts. She could hear his voice through the door, low and urgent, but couldn't make out the words. When he returned 5 minutes later, he looked like he'd aged a decade. "What happened?" Emily asked. "That was Detective Morrison. They found a body this morning. Carlo Mancini, one of my father's old associates. He'd been tortured before he was killed." Adrian's voice was hollow. "The killer left a message carved into his chest. The son pays for the father's sins." Emily felt sick. "They're targeting your father's people to get to you. It's worse than that. Mancini was the fourth one. The others just hadn't been found yet." Adrian looked at her with something close to desperation. "Emily, I need you to leave Chicago, today. I'll send you somewhere safe, somewhere they can't find you, until I sort this out." "Absolutely not. This isn't negotiable." "You're right. It's not. Because I'm not running." Emily stood, facing him directly. "You promised me we'd face things together. You don't get to break that promise the second things get hard." "This isn't hard. This is deadly. These people won't hesitate to hurt you to hurt me." "Then we make sure they can't." Emily's voice was steel. "You're not the same man your father was, Adrian. You've spent years proving that, so prove it now. We handle this the right way, the legal way, and we do it together." Adrian stared at her for a long moment, something breaking and reforming in his expression. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You know that? I learned from watching you survive a bullet wound in an alley." Emily managed a small smile. "So what's the plan?" The plan, it turned out, involved Detective Morrison, the FBI, and a very uncomfortable conversation about Adrian's father's criminal enterprises. Adrian laid everything out: names, locations, the structure of the old organization, everything he knew about his father's enemies and allies. "This is good," Morrison said, reviewing the information. "With this, we can connect the murders, identify suspects. But DeLuca, you understand this puts a target on your back too? The target's already there. At least this way I'm taking the shot with law enforcement backup instead of starting a war." Adrian glanced at Emily. "I'm trying to do things differently." Morrison followed his gaze, understanding dawning. The nurse from the alley. You two are together? Yes, which is why I need this resolved quickly and cleanly. She's not part of this world, and I won't let her pay for my father's mistakes. Fair enough. We'll set up protective custody for Ms. Carter. No, Emily interjected. I'm not hiding. I'm staying with Adrian. Ma'am, that's not safe. Neither is being separated. Whoever's doing this already knows about me, already has photos of me. Putting me in protective custody just makes me an easier target. Emily's voice was calm, rational. I stay with Adrian, with his security team, where we can protect each other. Morrison looked between them, clearly wanting to argue, but finally nodded. Your funeral. But we're assigning federal protection regardless. 2 agents, 24/7. It was a compromise Emily could live with. Over the next week, their penthouse became a fortress. Federal agents in the lobby, Adrian's security team on their floor, every window alarmed, every exit monitored. It should have felt suffocating, but instead Emily felt oddly safe, cocooned in layers of protection. Adrian threw himself into working with the FBI, identifying everyone his father had wronged, anyone who might have a reason for revenge. The list was disturbingly long. But as they worked through it, patterns emerged, and finally, a name surfaced. Dmitry Volkov. He was one of my father's partners 20 years ago, Adrian explained to Emily over dinner one evening, both of them too tense to actually eat. They had a falling out over a shipment that went missing. My father blamed Volkov, cut him out of the organization, destroyed his reputation. Volkov swore revenge, but then he disappeared. Everyone assumed he'd left the country, or died. But he didn't. No. The FBI tracked him to a property in Indiana. He's been living under an assumed name, building a new operation, waiting. Adrian's hands clenched on the table. He's dying. Cancer. Has maybe 6 months left. This is his last chance to settle the score. So what happens now? The FBI raids the property tomorrow. They arrest Volkov, charge him with 4 murders and conspiracy. It's over. But Adrian didn't sound relieved. He sounded exhausted. What's wrong? Emily asked. My father destroyed this man's life over a misunderstanding. The shipment wasn't stolen. I found records years later proving it was seized by customs. But my father was too proud to admit he was wrong, so he ruined Volkov anyway. Adrian looked at her with anguished eyes. How many people did my father hurt? How many lives did he destroy for nothing more than ego and greed? You're not your father. But I inherited his debts, his sins. 4 people are dead because of choices he made 20 years ago. Emily moved around the table, pulling Adrian into her arms. 4 people are dead because a dying man chose revenge over peace. That's on Volkov, not you, and certainly not your father's ghost. She tilted his face up to look at her. You've spent years trying to be better than your father. You've succeeded. Don't let his legacy poison what we're building. Adrian pulled her into his lap, burying his face against her shoulder. I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me. The thought of losing you because of my past, you're not going to lose me. We're going to get through this, and then we're going to live the life we've been planning. The boring, normal, legitimate life where the most exciting thing that happens is arguing about what to watch on Netflix. Adrian laughed, the sound muffled against her neck. That sounds perfect. The FBI raid happened the next morning. Emily was at work when Adrian called with the news. They got him. Volkov, 3 of his men, all the evidence they need for prosecution. He's dying anyway, but he'll die in prison instead of free. Adrian's relief was palpable. It's over, Emily. It's really over. Emily felt something loosen in her chest, tension she'd been carrying for weeks finally releasing. Come pick me up. Let's go home. I'm already on my way. But when Adrian arrived at the hospital 30 minutes later, his expression was troubled. What's wrong? Emily asked immediately. Volkov wants to talk to me. Before he's transferred to federal custody, he asked to see me. Says he has something to tell me about my father. You don't have to go. I know, but I think I need to. I need to understand why my father did what he did, why he destroyed so many lives. Adrian took her hand. Come with me? Emily should have said no, should have insisted they put the past behind them and move forward. But she could see the need in Adrian's eyes, the hunger for answers that had haunted him for years. Okay, I'll come with you. The federal holding facility was grim and institutional. They were led to a small interview room where Dmitry Volkov waited, handcuffed to the table. He was gaunt, his skin gray with illness, but his eyes were sharp and aware. Adrian DeLuca, he said, his accent thick. You look like your father. Same eyes. Cold. You wanted to talk. Talk. Adrian's voice was flat, giving nothing away. I wanted you to know why. Why I killed those men. Why I came after you. Volkov leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. Your father didn't just destroy my business. He destroyed my family. My wife killed herself when we lost everything. My daughter won't speak to me. I spent 20 years with nothing but hatred keeping me alive. My father's been dead for a decade. Killing his associates didn't bring your family back. No. But it made me feel something other than empty. Volkov's gaze shifted to Emily. You have something to lose now. That's good. Your father never did. He loved nothing but power. It made him dangerous, but it also made him hollow. Why are you telling me this? Adrian asked. Because you're not him. I've watched you for months, preparing my revenge. I saw you leave the criminal world. I saw you with her. Volkov nodded toward Emily. Your father would have killed anyone who threatened his empire. You called the police instead. You chose love over power. That's how I know you're nothing like him. Then why come after me at all? Because I'm dying, and I needed to know if Anton DeLuca's son was worth the mercy I'm about to give you. Volkov pulled a folded paper from his pocket, sliding it across the table. These are the names of everyone else your father wronged. People who might come seeking revenge. Consider it a gift from a dead man who wishes he'd chosen differently. Adrian took the paper, his expression unreadable. Why help me now? Because that girl beside you looks at you the way my wife used to look at me, before I let hatred consume everything good in my life. Don't make my mistakes, Adrian. Don't let your father's sins define you. Volkov leaned back, looking tired. Live. Love her. Be better than we were. The meeting ended there. In the car afterward, Adrian was silent, staring at the list of names Volkov had given him. What are you going to do with that? Emily asked. Give it to the FBI. Let them handle it. Adrian folded the paper carefully. Volkov was right. My father was hollow. He had power, but nothing worth living for. I refused to become that. You could never be that. You're too full of love and loyalty and fierce devotion to ever be hollow. Emily took his hand. Your father's story is over, Adrian. Ours is just beginning. Adrian pulled the car over, right there on the side of the road, and kissed her with desperate intensity. Marry me! Emily pulled back, shocked. What? Marry me. Not because it's logical or the next step or what people do. Marry me because I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone. Because you saved my life in 100 different ways. Because I want to spend every single day proving I'm worthy of you choosing me. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. Marry me, Emily Carter. Let me be yours forever. Emily's heart was racing, her mind spinning. This was insane. They'd known each other less than 6 months. They'd been through trauma and danger and chaos. Every rational part of her brain screamed that it was too fast, too soon, too much. But when she looked into Adrian's eyes, she saw their entire future laid out. Mornings with coffee, evenings cooking together, years of laughter and arguments and making up, children who'd never know their father as anything but a good man, growing old together in this strange, beautiful life they'd built from the ashes of who they used to be. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian's smile was incandescent. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. I don't have a ring. But I don't need a ring. I just need you. You'll get both. The biggest, most impractical ring I can find, and me every day for the rest of our lives. They got married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the penthouse. Jessica was Emily's maid of honor. Adrian's security chief, Marcus, different Marcus, Emily had to remind herself, a good Marcus, stood as best man. Detective Morrison attended, looking bemused by the whole affair. A handful of Adrian's people, now working legitimate jobs, filled out the small crowd. Emily wore a simple white dress she'd found on sale. Adrian wore a perfectly tailored suit. Neither of them could stop smiling. You know this is crazy, Jessica whispered right before the ceremony. Marrying a former crime boss after 6 months. Absolutely insane. I know, Emily agreed. But he's my insane, and I'm his. That's all that matters. The ceremony itself was short, simple, perfect. When the officiant asked if they took each other, both of them answered without hesitation. I do. When Adrian kissed her, sealing their vows, Emily felt something click into place. This was right. Against all odds, against all logic, this was exactly where she was supposed to be. The months that followed were a revelation. Marriage to Adrian was nothing like the strained, exhausting relationship she'd had with Marcus. This was partnership in its truest form, two people building something together, supporting each other through challenges, celebrating victories both large and small. Adrian's transition to legitimate business proved more successful than either of them had dared hope. The shipping company thrived. His real estate investments paid off. He donated generously to Chicago Memorial's pediatric wing, funding a new trauma center in memory of his sister. Emily continued working at the hospital, but cut back to part-time when Adrian suggested they might want to start thinking about a family. The conversation had been tentative at first, both of them testing the waters. "I know it's soon," Adrian had said one night, lying in bed with Emily curled against his side. "But I keep thinking about kids, about giving them the childhood I never had, safe, loved, with parents who choose each other every day." "I think about it too," Emily had admitted. "Little ones who have your eyes and, hopefully, my sense of humor, teaching them to be brave and kind and never invisible." "So we're doing this? Actually planning for a family?" "We're doing this." 6 months after their wedding, Emily found out she was pregnant. She told Adrian over breakfast, simply sliding the positive pregnancy test across the table while he read the morning news. He'd stared at it for a full minute in silence. Then he'd looked up at her, tears streaming down his face, and said, "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Emily confirmed, her own eyes wet. Adrian had pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass and starlight, and whispered thank you over and over against her hair. The pregnancy was healthy and uneventful. Adrian was hilariously overprotective, to the point where Emily had to sit him down and explain that she was pregnant, not terminally ill, and could still function like a normal human being. "I know that," he'd protested. "I just want to make sure you're comfortable. You asked me this morning if I needed help putting on my shoes. I'm 3 months pregnant, not 300 months. I'm going to be insufferable when you're actually showing, aren't I?" "Absolutely unbearable. I'm prepared for it." True to prediction, Adrian became more protective as Emily's belly grew. He'd installed a nursery in what used to be the guest room, decorating it himself with meticulous care. Emily would find him there sometimes, late at night, just sitting in the rocking chair they'd bought, his hand on her stomach, talking to their unborn child about everything and nothing. "I'm going to be a good father," he'd tell their baby. "Not like mine. I'm going to love you and protect you and teach you that power comes from choosing kindness, not fear. Your mother and I, we're going to give you everything good in this world." Emily would stand in the doorway, watching this dangerous man transformed by love into something gentle and hopeful, and feel overwhelmed by gratitude for the bullet that had brought them together. Their daughter was born on a snowy January morning. Sofia Maria de Luca came into the world screaming, healthy and perfect, with Adrian's dark hair and Emily's green eyes. Adrian held her for the first time with shaking hands, looking at Emily with such profound love and wonder that she started crying all over again. "We made her," he whispered, awed. "We made this perfect, beautiful person." "We did," Emily agreed, exhausted and elated and completely in love with her new family. Adrian proved to be exactly the father he'd promised, patient, devoted, completely besotted with his daughter. He'd wake for night feedings, change diapers without complaint, spend hours just holding Sophia and staring at her like she was the greatest miracle he'd ever witnessed. "You're spoiling her," Emily told him one evening, finding him rocking a sleeping Sophia when she should have been in her crib. "She's 6 weeks old. I'm pretty sure it's impossible to spoil her." "You said the same thing when she was 1 week old, and 2 weeks, and 3 weeks. Because it was true then, too. Adrian looked up at Emily, his expression soft. "I spent so many years afraid I'd turn into my father, that his darkness would be the only legacy I could pass down. But when I look at her, I see hope. I see the chance to build something better. That's because of you, Emily. You saved me in that alley, and you've been saving me every day since." Emily joined them, curling up against Adrian's side while their daughter slept peacefully between them. "We saved each other. That's how this works." 2 years later, they welcomed a son. Michael Adrian DeLuca was calmer than his sister, content to observe the world with solemn dark eyes. Adrian joked that he'd inherited his mother's practicality and his father's intensity, A combination that would either make him incredibly successful or incredibly stubborn. Both, Emily predicted. Definitely both. Life settled into a rhythm that Emily had never imagined possible back when she was the invisible ER nurse in the threadbare coat. The penthouse filled with toys and laughter and the beautiful chaos of young children. Adrian ran his legitimate business empire with the same fierce intelligence he'd once applied to the criminal world, but now he came home every evening, helped with bath time, read bedtime stories. They'd created something real and lasting from the ashes of who they'd been. Emily was no longer invisible, not to her children, who demanded her attention constantly, not to her husband, who still looked at her like she hung the moon, not to herself. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Adrian surprised her with a weekend away, just the two of them, Jessica babysitting the kids. He took her to a small bed and breakfast overlooking Lake Michigan, the same view they had from their penthouse, but somehow more intimate. 5 years, Adrian said, pulling her close as they stood on the balcony watching the sunset. 5 years since you agreed to marry a man you barely knew. Have you regretted it? Not once. Emily turned in his arms to face him. Well, maybe once, when you rearranged my entire kitchen without asking. You said you couldn't find anything because I had a system. Just because it didn't make sense to you didn't mean it was wrong. Adrian laughed, kissing her forehead. Okay, fair. Any other regrets? None. This life, our family, everything we've built, it's better than anything I could have imagined. Emily's voice softened. You know what I think about sometimes? That alley. If I'd walked past it that night, if I'd been 5 minutes earlier or later, we never would have met. Our children wouldn't exist. All of this would just be potential that never happened. I think about that too. How close I came to dying before I ever knew what living actually meant. Adrian's arms tightened around her. I'm grateful for every choice that led us to that moment, even the painful ones, even the dangerous ones, because they brought me to you. That's very romantic for a former crime boss. I contain multitudes. Adrian's smile was wicked. Want me to prove it? Emily laughed, pulling him inside. Absolutely. 7 years after that first night in the alley, Emily stood in the pediatric wing of Chicago Memorial, watching the dedication ceremony for the DeLuca Family Trauma Center. Adrian stood beside her, their children fidgeting in their formal clothes, both of them clearly bored by the speeches but trying to behave. The center represented everything Adrian had become. A man who chose to heal instead of harm, who built instead of destroyed, who used his resources to help the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. It was funded entirely by his legitimate businesses, a monument to transformation and redemption. Your father would be proud, Emily whispered to Adrian as the ribbon was cut. My father would be appalled, Adrian corrected. But I don't care what he would think. I care what our children will think when they're old enough to understand what this represents. What does it represent? That people can change, that your past doesn't have to define your future, that love is stronger than fear, and kindness is more powerful than violence. Adrian looked down at Sophia and Michael. That they come from a man who chose to be better, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You really have come a long way from the man bleeding in that alley. We both have. You're not the invisible nurse anymore, Emily. You're my partner, my equal, the mother of my children, the love of my life. You're everything. As they walked through the new trauma center, Sophia tugging on Emily's hand to show her the colorful murals on the walls, Michael babbling excitedly about the fish tank in the waiting room, Emily felt a profound sense of completion. This was the life she'd built from that single moment of choosing to help instead of run, choosing courage over fear. The trauma center would save countless lives in the years to come. Children would arrive broken and leave healed. Families would find hope in the darkest moments. And it would all exist because Emily Carter had pressed her hands against a stranger's bullet wound and refused to let him die. Some people might call it fate. Others might call it chance. Emily called it choice. The 1,000 small choices they'd both made to love instead of fear, to build instead of destroy, to see each other as they truly were and choose each other anyway. That night, after the ceremony, after putting the children to bed, Emily and Adrian stood on their balcony overlooking the city that had brought them together. Chicago glittered below them, full of possibilities and dangers and everything in between. Do you ever miss it? Emily asked quietly. The power, the control, the thrill of your old life? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, solving problems with decisive action instead of legal channels and bureaucracy. But then I come home to you and our children, and I remember what I actually want. Not power, not control, just this. Just us. Just us, Emily echoed, leaning into his warmth. Besides, Adrian added with a slight smile, you're far more dangerous than anyone I ever dealt with in my criminal days. Excuse me? You're absolutely terrifying. You brought a crime boss to his knees with nothing but compassion and stubbornness. You convinced me to change my entire life. You created two tiny humans who have me completely wrapped around their fingers. That's real power, Emily, the kind that actually matters. Emily laughed, tilting her face up to kiss him. I love you, Adrian DeLuca. I love you, Emily DeLuca. Thank you for saving my life. Which time? Every time. Every single time. They stood together as the city lights flickered below and the stars emerged above, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. The woman who'd felt invisible had become someone's entire world. The man who'd known only violence had learned that love was the greatest power of all. And in the end, that was the only story that mattered. Not the danger they'd faced or the darkness they'd survived, but the choice to love each other fiercely, completely, without reservation. The choice to build a life where their children would grow up knowing they were seen, valued, loved beyond measure. The choice to prove that transformation was possible, that redemption was real, that two broken people could heal each other and create something whole. Emily Carter. DeLuca, the invisible nurse who'd run toward danger instead of away from it, had found her place in the world. And Adrian DeLuca, the man who'd built an empire on fear, had learned that the only empire worth having was the one built on love. Together, they'd become more than either could have been alone. And that, Emily thought as Adrian pulled her closer, was exactly how it was supposed to be.